I used to work at a GameStop. The time that I worked there was for about 6 months, roughly 5 years ago. The GameStop was located on the end of a little strip mall in a pretty popular shopping area in town. The job was pretty good for the most part because I liked video games a lot and I knew a lot about them. Anyways, a few months into the job, when I had gotten the hang of everything, I started to work nights, which was the busier shift. I generally worked from sometime in the mid-afternoon until 9 p.m., which is when we closed. Things were busiest in the late afternoon, and then they would quiet down as we got into the night. One night, when things were pretty dead, I noticed a man come into the store and immediately go to the far corner and look at our PS4 used game section. He just kind of stood there though, not really seeming to be looking at anything in particular. He slowly paced a little and stayed in the store for roughly 10 minutes and then left. This wasn't anything to take note of, except for the fact that this happened every night for about a week straight. The man would come in at around the same time every night and stand by the PS4 section, but never buy anything. He usually had his back turned to me the entire time. However, he would occasionally look over at me. All I could get from this was that he always wore a jacket and hat, as well as sunglasses. I just got a little suspicious feeling, but then again, he never did anything wrong, so it was probably just me being over paranoid. Then one night, after work, I closed up the store and went to my car. When I arrived at my car, there was an envelope tucked into my driver's door. At first, I thought it was some kind of brochure, but when I got closer, I saw that it was a DVD in one of those little envelopes. It had no labeling on it of any kind. I didn't know what it was supposed to be, but being into technology, I took it home and put it in my computer to watch what was on it. I played it, and the first part was a man's voice speaking that I couldn't recognize, and the sentences that he was saying weren't making any kind of sense at all. This continued for several minutes. Then the video switched to a recording from a car. It appeared to be a video taken from the back of a car at another car driving. The video then zoomed in on the driver of the car, and that's when I nearly had a heart attack. I saw that it was me driving on the video. It showed me driving down the road, even making a few turns. Then the video cut out and went to another video of a car driving. This was also my car, except this time the video was taken from a car following me and on a different day. It showed me turn on several roads, and then onto my street and all the way into my apartment complex. Then it showed me get out of my car and walk inside. The video ended after that. I was really creeped out with what I had seen. I called a few of my friends and talked to them, hoping maybe it was some sort of a prank, but it wasn't. But back to the suspicious man that always came into GameStop and never bought anything. After seeing him on the night that I got the mysterious DVD, I never saw him come into the store again. That makes me think that the two were linked. But nothing else weird ever happened after that. I ended up giving the DVD to the police, and I moved a couple years ago. A couple of years ago, I worked at a GameStop during my summers home from college. The GameStop I worked at was located across the street from a Target and next to a pizza place. It was overall a good experience for me. That is until one night. It was a Thursday night and I was working with one other person. Things were pretty typical. At I think about 7 p.m. or so, a man walked in with a console in his hand. He was wearing a dirty old jacket, and to be quite honest, he looked homeless. He approached me at the counter and placed down an old GameCube. The system was absolutely filthy with dirt on it, and it looked like it probably didn't work. We also didn't buy or sell GameCube anymore because they were too old and we hadn't carried them in years. The man said he'd like to sell it to us and wanted to know what he could get. I could smell the heavy smell of cigarettes as he spoke. I told him we were sorry, but we couldn't take it because we don't buy GameCubes. The man's face started to get angry. He tried to persuade me to buy it, but I told him it couldn't be done. The man then started to raise his voice and basically just complain about GameStop for a while. There were maybe 2 or 3 other people in the store at the time, and they all started to look at the angry man. Finally, he cursed at us and stormed out of the store. I was really happy to see him leave. People would sometimes come in with items that we didn't buy, but none of them were as crazy as this situation. I worked the rest of my shift, and when closing time came, me and my coworker went to our cars and left. I got into my old Chevy Malibu I was driving at the time, and before I drove home, I looked on my phone to catch up on the text that had come in as I was working. Just then, in my side mirror, I saw a man emerge from the bush behind where I was parked. It was the same man that tried to sell me his GameCube. He was walking towards my driver's door at a fast pace. I barely had time to react before he reached the window. I quickly reached for the door lock and locked the door. He tried the handle immediately, but it was locked. I had just gotten it on time. I heard him shouting at me, and I decided I need to drive away as fast as I could. But in the next second, he swung his hand at my window, and I could see what appeared to be a rock in the man's hand. It hit the window, and the glass shattered everywhere. I could feel sharp pieces hitting me all over. I slammed my foot on the gas and drove out of there. It was the biggest adrenaline rush I had ever gotten, but it wasn't very enjoyable for me at all. I sped away and all the way home. Then I told my parents what had happened, and we called the police. The man was able to be located and caught, and my window was able to be replaced with insurance. However, that was my last summer working at GameStop. When I was a little kid, I used to love to go to GameStop. I would always beg my parents to take me there because video games were my favorite thing. Luckily for me, there was a mall nearby our house where my mom would always shop, and when she went to her stores, I would be inside GameStop playing the demo games and looking at stuff. One day, just like any other, my mom had to go shopping, and I told her I would be at GameStop. I went inside and saw that it was very busy. All of the demo games were being played, and people were crowded around everywhere. Looking back, I believe that it was a Saturday, and that's why the store was so busy. I went over to the PlayStation 2 section, which was the current gaming system at that time. I also had one. I started looking through the games when I got a tap on my shoulder. It was a man that worked at the GameStop. He asked me if I needed any help with anything. I told him no, I was just looking at the PS2 games. The man told me there was a new video game store in the mall where the games were cheaper, and he asked me if I wanted to see it. I told him sure, and the man told me to follow him, and we exited the store. We walked into the hallway of the mall and then walked for a couple of minutes. Then I noticed my mom walking out of a store about 20 feet away. As soon as I saw her though, the man quickly turned around and walked to the opposite direction. I turned to follow him, but he was already so far away that I decided to go to my mom instead. When I got to her, she asked me what I was doing and why I left GameStop. I told her that the man was going to take me to another video game store in the mall. But my mom looked at me and told me there was no other video game stores in this mall. That's when I got a really creepy feeling that the man was possibly trying to abduct me. We went back to GameStop, and as it turns out, the man didn't even work there. My mom didn't let me leave her sight after that. But the creepiest part of that to me is the fact that the man seemed to know who my mom was before I waved at her or anything, as if he had been watching me earlier and knew I was away from her when I was at GameStop.